let the record reflect the jury is present. And also, you all have a seat. I also wanted to comment on the fact that you all are very good and attentive about wearing your juror badges, which is a big help to everybody because they can identify you, and they don't start talking about this case or another case when they're around you. That's the purpose of those juror badges that you wear. Every time you come back from a break where you're away from the courthouse, I'm going to ask you the same question. Is there anything to report by way of any unauthorized contact regarding this case, or any research or anything that was done contrary to my instructions? Anybody? All right, let the record reflect the jurors are all shaking their heads in the negative. And having said that, we're ready to proceed with the defense opening statement. Go ahead, you may proceed.
Good afternoon.
Mr. Milton.
Well, you can tell why we're here is because the parties don't agree on the facts, and that's why we're all here. And I'm not going to be nitpicky and go through every single fact, but I am going to tell you what we believe the evidence is actually going to show with respect to the key issues and facts in this case. First off, there's one thing I'm going to point out. You saw a photo on the screen that showed two people in a cockpit. Those weren't real people. It wasn't Mr. Gratton and Mr. Page. Those were mannequins for the purpose of that photograph. That's just for clarification. So, we're here. Everybody knows this is a very, very dangerous sport. People engage in it not to make money, because it's not like NASCAR. They engage in it for the thrill. And the boat owners, they're rich people. They're wealthy people. This Mr. Page is going to tell you that he spent $500,000 on that.
Objection. Relevance. It's not relevant to any material issue in this case.
Goes to the credibility witness. The next thing is that all the racers know is that when they engage in a race, there's always the risk of serious injury or death. These are not unknowns to them. The racers are volunteers. They're not made to do this. Joey Gratton did not have to participate. No one had to participate. They do it because they love it. And in fact, they love competing against each other. Mr. Mark Antonio is going to tell you is that he looks, when he knows what the race schedule is for the race circuit with Superboat, he calls up the friends, the competitors in his particular class, which is the Page Motorsport class, and says, hey, are you going to race in this one? And if enough people say yes, then Mr. Mark Antonio goes. Otherwise, if there's just two votes, he has no interest, because it's all about winning that race and getting that trophy. And there is a little bit of money passed out, but it's not what these people live for. It's not their job. By the same token, the Superboat International Group is made up of volunteers. That's who they are. Don DiPetrillo has always been a firefighter. He's been a fire chief here in Broward. He's currently the fire chief of the Seminole tribe. Brian Half, who lives in Pasco County, he's a volunteer also. They're both assistant medical safety coordinators. His real job is an ambulance operations manager for an ambulance service in Tampa. Which brings me back to, well, how did this whole thing come about? The rescue team got put together somewhere around 1993-ish. At that time, there was a guy, Charlie Bass, in charge. He then was succeeded by David DiPetrillo, Don's identical twin brother, who you'll see. And David DiPetrillo's assistants were David Harshfield, who is a firefighter, paramedic, EMT, and Brian Half, who's never been a firefighter, wasn't then, isn't now. And the reason why David hired Brian, personal friends, had a personal friendship. He knew him. And at that time, Brian actually was in Key West with an ambulance service. So then who succeeded David? Well, then we had Dave Harshfield, who is the next medical safety coordinator. Then he stopped doing it for a while, and that's when Don and Brian did it, and now Dave's back doing it today. These are all volunteers. The only remuneration they get is a per diem. It's to cover their expenses of being in a hotel and having to buy food that they normally get at home. Now I'm going to use a word that's going to come up time and time again. Connexity. Causal connection. You've heard what the plaintiff's theme is in the case. The theme of the defense case is there's no causal connection between these purported wrongs and what actually happened. And that's why it's important to actually go through what the actual sequence of events was. The boat rolled over at turn one. When it stopped, it's upside down. Canopy is underwater. But we're not talking about a long way, we're talking about a foot. Mikey Houck and Scott Lang were at turn one in the medical boat. They immediately deployed. The first thing you always do is check the condition of the occupants. Are they injured? Are they conscious, unconscious? What's going on? Because that tells them what else they need as far as assistance. So they go down, Mikey looks in, and he sees the two guys out of their harnesses sitting on the roof of the canopy, which just had a little bit of water in it at the time. And they're talking. He can't hear them, but they're conversing. So he knows they're okay. They both have their helmets on. And he immediately surfaces, this is just seconds, gives the okay signal because he expects these guys are going to get out of the boat fine. He goes back down, and as soon as he gets there this time, which again is seconds, he sees light. As soon as he sees light, he knows that one of the racers has opened that escape hatch. And you can open the escape hatch from inside or outside. The thing about the escape hatch is that once you open it, it does not stay open by itself. You have to hold it open. So as soon as he saw that, Mikey then immediately started around to the stern of the boat and started climbing the boat to get to the escape hatch to assist the racers out of the escape hatch. And Steve Page does exit first. And Steve is a large man. And the dimensions of the escape hatch are 16 3/4 inches by 21 inches. So he gets through, but obviously the escape hatch as a means of exiting the vessel is not going to be used by anybody until Page is out. So Page gets out, Mikey immediately reaches in, and now he sees something that he didn't expect to see. Joey is not like on his knees or trying to stand up. Joey's face, is underwater in the bottom of the canopy. He reaches in and grabs his legs to try to pull him. He can't move him. Ricky Pardo is the next guy there, and Ricky is there as soon as Mikey runs out of air, and it's again, now we're just talking another very, very short time. Ricky reaches in, and he has the same problem. I'm going to get to the diver who actually extracted Joey was Jimmy Dobson. I'm going to come back to him because now we're going to go under the water to the canopy. When Ricky Pardo and Kyle Majeski deployed, Ricky went to the escape hatch, Kyle went to the canopy. And Kyle could not get the canopy latch open. And this is not rocket science. You just turn it. And what is happening here, this wasn't a matter of being turned all the way around so it was open and closed. It was because something was catching and holding onto it. So the latch would be turned part way and then it would snap back. It couldn't be turned any further. So what happens is we have other divers go down there and try to release it. All unsuccessful. And that includes taking the pins out of the hinges, prying on it with various tools. And when does the escape hatch, when does the canopy hatch come out? At the exact same moment that Jimmy Dobson pulls Joey out. Now at that time, the position of the boat is both hatches are underwater. Joey must have been the one caught on the latch. And when the boat finally was underwater, he floated free because Travis Scott says he couldn't believe the guy wasn't there because he'd seen him there. But now he gets the hatch off. Well, he gets the hatch off because the person that's holding the latch so it can't be turned and released is Joey. So now Joey's up. And you're going to see timelines. And because there's two timelines, there's one done by a person that did it on behalf of the plaintiffs, one did it on behalf of myself. And the timeline from my investigator is very precise because obviously no one has a complete video or a complete set of still photos of the entire sequence of events. So this is made up of looking at all sorts of photos, all sorts of videos, and then matching them up, and then starting at a 0 point. And there's great detail in that about who was where at what specific time. The one thing you're not going to hear any testimony on, there won't be any evidence, is what was Joey doing to get up. The only testimony you're going to hear is Steve Page continuing to insist is that Joey was caught in his harness. What you're going to hear from every diver is that no one ever saw Joey in his harness. No one ever released Joey from his harness. No one cut his harness because we have the post-accident photographs showing the equipment and there's no damage to the harness whatsoever.
Supplements is 14.
Now, that's the events. And when you look at it and when you hear the evidence from all the people involved in this rescue, this rescue team did everything they could, everything humanly possible to extract Joey. And unfortunately, they did not extract him before he drowned. But that does not mean that they're liable or they did anything wrong. They did everything the way they were supposed to. Now, Mikey Houck is not a firefighter, paramedic, EMT. And I'm sure you're going to get tired of hearing that phrase. And I'm going to tell you, everybody's going to show, that has nothing to do with what this rescue team does. And that even comes from these people who are firefighters, paramedics, EMTs. And even so far as the people that hold Dive Rescue 1 certificates and Dive Rescue 2 certificates, because they have nothing whatsoever. That training has nothing to do with what this team does. What they do, and what they have for years, and what Mr. Houck went through, Mikey was trained by David Harshfield. And you're going to have an exhibit. And the exhibit is the Superboat International Medical and Safety Rescue Swimmer/Diver Training and Certification Manual. This is what the team members get. This is what they read, but they are trained by Dave Harshfield. And Mr. Harshfield will be here to tell you exactly what that training consists of. Now to address just a couple of things that you've already seen that you might as well talk about now. You've heard the contention, well, they didn't stop the race. They showed you the photo of the J.D. Byrider. Doesn't show anything. At that time, the emergency escape hatch is above the water. You don't see any water. You're not going to see anything that indicates that the boat passing by, a race boat passing by after the rollover, had anything to do with this rescue. Or, and more importantly, that it actually did anything to impair the rescue. Joey and Steve Page also got training. And you're going to see what that consists of. And they get their training on how to extract themselves from the boat with a different race circuit, OSS. And David DiPetrillo will testify that he's the one that trained both Steve and Joey. So they knew what proper procedures were for extracting themselves from a boat that rolled over and to get out. You're not going to go into an enclosed space if you are a rescue diver. That would be the testimony. Because now you put your life at risk. So you don't do that. So that is why there's no diver going into the enclosed space. The only way to get Joey out in this case was through the emergency escape hatch or through the canopy, even though he'd be underwater, he'd at least be able to extract him that way. We've already talked about the escape hatch. Until Steve's out of the way, you can't get to Joey. Joey's already underwater, and they can't get the canopy off, and people are working on the canopy. And they worked on the canopy diligently until Joey actually floated free. On the economic losses, loss support is, as you heard, it's what he would have provided in the future. At the time of this incident, Joey had retired from the automobile dealership, did back in 2009. He invested in a pawn shop with 3 of his buddies. They're all 25% shareholders. When he passed away, Priscilla took over his 25%. The loss support figure includes lost income from pawn shop number 2, which didn't even get started until 2012. Had nothing to do with Joey, although Priscilla's the 4th owner of that too. And it also includes pawn shop number 3, which doesn't even exist. That comes about in 2016, again with Priscilla with her same shares. The trolley company is a Priscilla company. Joey's only involvement was after he retired from the automobile dealership. Priscilla will tell you, well, he helped me out on maintaining the trolleys. But that's her company. The equestrian stables, that against Priscilla, and she's had that. And the reason is she's a competitive horse jumper. She has 2 beautiful horses, and she competes in horse competitions. That's one of her activities. And the stables are, because she has to stable her horses, it makes sense to have stables where you have someone else help defray your expenses. Again, that's her company. This obviously is a tragic case. You have a man that lost his life. But in the first instance, as triers of fact, you have to make a decision based upon the evidence, the facts that you hear, whether any of the defendants are responsible. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else come before the court at this time?
Yes, I have a motion that we can do out of the hearing again.
All right, let me get the jurors to return back to the jury room for just a minute. And then take a smoke break, and then we'll get started here in just a few minutes.
Once you wait, I should say. Once you wait. George, I think, walked around.
All right, you all can have a seat. Ladies and gentlemen, I was anticipating maybe not being quite this far along this early, but we're actually ahead of schedule right now. So I'm going to excuse you for the evening, and you can come back tomorrow at 10, and we'll start up with the witnesses at that time. That'll be what's called the evidentiary phase, and then that will continue on for, I think, quite a few days. So we will see you back tomorrow. And what's the most important thing? Don't talk, don't research, don't Google, don't Twitter, don't post, don't go on Facebook, and, just don't discuss anything about the case, all right? And I want to thank you for your attention today. We'll see you back tomorrow at 10 a.m. in courtroom 1050, and we will get started probably very close to that, but not exactly. It depends on how many lawyers you can get out of here at the time to start.